customer experience. This is something that's critical to all e-commerce businesses and every other industry as well. Our next guest is Arthur Nowak, one of the world's most important leaders in customer experience. Previously, he ran Asia Pacific operations for one of the world's premier customer experience companies. He had 25,000 people reporting to him here and many more in places like India, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. So a special guest with a special message. Please welcome Arthur Nowak of Arthur Nowak CX Consulting.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to the team that's watching this today. I'm super excited to talk about e-commerce and some trends that we're seeing. I do want to clarify that while I'm in a beach environment, we have been working very hard on customer experience here in the Philippines, and I'm proud to be able to come to all of you today to talk about e-commerce. And I plan on really taking a different side on the e-commerce journey today, if you will. Because as we've seen e-commerce grow since the 2019, really effectively the start of the pandemic, we've seen almost a 52% increase in e-commerce since that time, right? And obviously that's a trend that we've all lived with. I think all of us have become more shoppers in the e-commerce space, but that growth is also forecasted to continue at a rate of about 14.5% through 2023 and conceivably really beyond. And I know that we all want to take advantage of those trends, but my view from an e-commerce perspective comes a little bit differently. And it's the role that social media plays in e-commerce, right? And so a couple of interesting stats to share, right? 88% more leads are generated for companies who have an active presence within their social media space. And in terms of sales conversion, when you compare companies who are active in social media versus not active in social media, those companies that are active convert sales with their customers at a rate of about 32% greater than non-active social media companies. And if you think about why that is, one of the things that really sticks out to me is across the globe, we have 3.96 billion users in social media, which represents more than half the global population. On average, we as individuals will spend about 2.5 hours per day on social media. And if you think about that in the course of a lifetime, the only activity that actually surpasses social media usage is watching TV over the courses of our lives. But if you're anything like me, when you are watching TV, there's a tendency to actually be more focused on social media and multitask, if you will. And you spend that time watching social media while TV's in the background. So I would argue that maybe it's the more prominent activity in our lives. And, you know, social media encompasses a variety of platforms. Facebook continues to be the leader in social media, but you have some new social media platforms like TikTok, Snapchat that are really up and coming and play number 2, number 3 in the overall daily usage by platform. And so when we talk about social media, I think it's important to understand that there are multiple different platforms within that universe that individuals interact with. And those platforms lever themselves to different types of content in order to drive the right engagement with your target audience. I've been living in the Philippines for the last 8 years, and I've spent a lot of time, you know, learning about the country and working with teams here, large teams. And one of the things that really sticks out to me is, number one, 82% of the users in 82% of the Philippines uses social media. It's actually the number 1 country globally for social media usage. So that's quite a fantastic statistic. And if you look at the Philippine economy, about 7% of the GDP is actually fueled by the creative industry within the Philippines. And so the premise I come forward today is I think there's an opportunity to leverage some of the creative talent that exists within the Philippines in order to support the e-commerce space, a creative process outsourcing, if you will. Those of us that have spent time in the Philippines know that innately the Philippines is a very creative geography, and that doesn't necessarily get fully summarized in some of the graduation statistics you see. So about 5% of the graduates annually, there's about 4 million college graduates annually out of the Philippines. About 5% of them will come with a creative background or specialization in their degrees. However, as I've worked in the contact center space in what I would argue supporting non-creative, industries like fintech, health tech, technical support, what I've noticed is that because the Philippines is so adept at social media, there's a secondary skill set that's innate with these employees, and that is one of creativity. And that comes in the form of graphic design, video, videography, etc., things that you need in order to generate exciting content. In fact, I just quickly, for the purposes of this presentation, went online to find graphics designers. And I have some examples here of great graphic design work that's coming out of the Philippines that can help support social media strategies. So ultimately, I think it is possible to think of the Philippines as a destination to help with the social media content creative that is very laborious in order to create a great brand presence for an e-commerce company. And the typical team structure is illustrated here, which includes, a content brand strategist who ultimately would lead some of the campaign development, and supported by a team of a content researcher who ultimately is, researching trends, understanding what consumers are resonating with, seeing what the performance is from other campaigns, to content creatives who do the copy, the visual art direction, both in image and videography. And then finally, content propagators. Those are individuals who actually engage with the content and with your consumer, because it's not enough just to post in social media. You also have to have an engaging brand presence, which means you directly engage through comments with your targeted consumers as they also engage with your brand. And so building this team requires support in terms of a workflow, how to integrate that into your organization. That workflow can work with your marketing departments. If you're a smaller startup, it can be integrated with founders. But ultimately, the workflow can be developed so that the content that's being created is consistent with your brand guidelines, your brand positioning, but ultimately you have access to these highly talented, highly skilled resources to create this content creative for you, as well as the engagement. And in today's world of technology, there are multiple affordable platforms that are out there that can help an organization to organize this social media environment, both from a forward-looking calendar of content publishing, as well as workflow management around the conversations that are occurring within your social media space. But what's even more interesting is some of the embedded analytics that are based in those platforms that not only tell you about your engagement with your consumers, but also the engagement of your competitors and how your potential consumers might perceive their brand. And that analytics is quite insightful for you to continue to grow and develop your e-commerce presence driven by social media engagement. And so ultimately, I think that the Philippines is in a very unique position to address challenges that I think e-commerce companies see ahead of them in order to grow and be successful. And I would ask this question: do you have some of these challenges? I need to increase web traffic or mobile app downloads. I need to launch or accelerate brand awareness of a new product or service. Do you need to differentiate my brand, your brand or service against your competitors? Do you need to drive higher brand advocacy? Do you need to increase conversion to paying customers? And if the answer to any of those statements is yes, I think a team in the Philippines can ultimately help support your objectives, because what we've seen is an 88%, higher lead generation through active social media engagement, 32% more sales conversion, and ultimately, given some of the labor demographics within the Philippines, there's a 60% cost reduction opportunity in creative resources working in this geography versus other geographies globally. So in summary, I hope that you have found some of this information interesting, and it's a very short presentation. However, I want to connect with you on the topic. And if you'd like to connect with me to have a greater, more in-depth discussion on creative talent in the Philippines, how you can source creative talent in the Philippines, and how you can organize that talent within your organizational structure, please connect with me on LinkedIn at Arthur Nowak. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you so very much. Richard, Rebecca, I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this forum, and thank you for having me.
Very good, Arthur. Yeah, there's a lot of detailed information that you have. And yeah, anyone out there, if you want to connect with Arthur, just or send me a message too, and I'll make the introduction myself. But Arthur, now the age levels. I know in Philippines, it's a very young demographic. Now, what you're saying though, oldies like my generation, they're not as attuned to this, are they?
I think, look, I think it's a misnomer that the older generation hasn't adapted to the social media space. I would tell you that when I went for a 2-month visit with my mom, because of the pandemic, it was work from home. So I was able to spend some time with her. I took that opportunity, over those 2 months, I saw her, a 60-year-old lady, on social media more than I was on social media. So I think that it really does transcend, generations. I think the user interface is quite easy to leverage. And so I think social media is transcending, generational gaps. And I think that there is adept usage at all various different levels.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I know how many times, while you were talking, I was thinking of how many times I've talked to people from these online freelance websites, and even your buddy Bryce from one of the other big call centers, and others who said that they really got serious about themes when the largest number of their best online providers of graphic designs. And so this is a big opportunity we have here for Philippines. And yeah, the social media really is the only game, it seems. Arthur, is that too melodramatic, or is that close?
No, I don't think it's melodramatic. I mean, at all. I mean, I think social media is quite influential in today's space. And that transcends e-commerce. We see the impact of social media on politics and political races. It is a very influential forum, and I think it's because we spend a lot of time in that forum, and so we're always engaging with information that we interact within these channels. And the statistics around the creative side of the Philippines are a little bit lacking. I think that there's a latent opportunity within the context of the Philippines to get some better structure around quantifying the data points around creative talent within the Philippines. I think living here, I see it, I live it, I breathe it. It's hard to sometimes try to communicate that, and I tried to do the best that I could in the presentation today around communicating that. But I do think it's an opportunity for organizations who are looking to source creative talent with compelling content. And I do think that those that have already paved the way on engaging the Philippines in this context have been ultra successful. And that's why I wanted to spend the time today to really talk about this topic and bring it forward.
Very good. And with the continuing improvements in connectivity, this could be a really explosive opportunity for the country. So, Arthur, thank you very much, my friend. Glad to see you. I know you got your team there with you, making all kinds of plans and schemes to conquer the world. So wish you well, and we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. Enjoy.